Good evening from the State of Kuwait. Welcome to the 7 o'clock news for Friday, the 10th of October 2014. I am Dalia Badran with the headlines for tonight. The UN envoy to Syria warns that up to 700 people are still trapped in Ain al-Arab as fighting continues in the town. Israeli occupation forces close Al-Aqsa Mosque, stopping Palestinians from performing Friday's prayers. The Pakistani Prime Minister meets army chiefs over clashes between Pakistani and Indian troops. Protesters in Hong Kong return to the streets after talks between the government and protesters' leaders are cancelled. Hello and welcome. Fighting between Kurdish forces and the Islamic State or the IS group in the embattled Syrian border town of Ain al-Arab and surrounding areas escalated today. A local Kurdish official and Syrian activists and the IS group is shelling a Syrian border crossing with Turkey, trying to capture it and cut off the town. The official said the IS fighters were aiming to seize the crossing in order to close the noose around the town's Kurdish defenders and prevent anyone from entering or leaving the town named Kobani in Kurdish. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights also said the militants today shelled several areas in Ain al-Arab, including the border crossing, which is the town's only gateway to Turkey. The UN Special Envoy to Syria today warned that up to 700 people, mainly elderly, are still trapped in Ain al-Arab. Stefan de Mistura also urged Turkey to allow in volunteers to Syria to defend the town from the IS militants. Addressing the reporters in Geneva, de Mistura appealed to the Turkish authorities in order to allow the flow of volunteers to enter the city and contribute to self-defense operations. He also urged Turkey to support the US-led coalition in carrying out airstrikes on the IS targets around the town. Turkey is reluctant to get involved militarily, partly because it is concerned about arming the Kurdish forces who are fighting the IS militants. Israeli occupation forces imposed closure around Al-Aqsa Mosque in the Old City of Jerusalem as of Thursday night and bans Palestinians from access into the holy site today, not allowing them to perform Friday prayers. Fatma Abdul Karim from Ramallah has more on this.
Since last night, the Israeli occupation forces have imposed a strict closure on the old city of Jerusalem, especially Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in the heart of it. The Israeli soldiers banned Palestinians less than 50 years of age from accessing the holy mosque to perform the prayers and turned the old city into a nearly closed military zone, with movement restrictions only against Palestinians.
Since last night, the Israeli arbitrary measures started around Al-Aqsa Mosque from all sides, all through the old city, not just Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. They placed large numbers of checkpoints and armed soldiers against civilians who come to pray.
Israeli soldiers spread by the hundreds across the old city of Jerusalem placed metal gates and cement blocks to check and search the Palestinians arriving for the prayers. The Israeli police surrounded the old city and closed down all its gates and said there were information that said Palestinians prepared for a large march after the prayers and used that as a pretext.
The assault in Al-Aqsa Mosque happens daily, where they forbid Palestinians from entering the mosque from 7 a.m. till noon and attack children, men and women inside the mosque. And the only reason is to allow the settlers to hold their rituals.
In the past 2 weeks, the Israeli security forces were ordered to be tougher with Palestinians and impose a more restricted closure against them, paving the way for Jewish settlers to carry out their own rituals during their religious holidays, which will last for 1 more week. Palestinians warn that the Israeli government and the security machines are agitating an already tense situation and call on the international community to intervene to put an end to the continued Israeli violation of the right of Muslims to pray in their holy shrine. Fatma Abdel Karim, Kuwait TV, Ramallah, Palestine.
Thank you, Fatma. Envoys from dozens of countries will gather Sunday for a conference that aims to raise billions of dollars to rebuild conflict-battered Gaza. About 50 countries will be represented in Cairo for talks that will include UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, 30 foreign ministers, and various international monetary and humanitarian bodies. The United Nations Palestinian Refugee Agency has described the financial needs as unprecedented ahead of Cairo meetings, which follows the Strip's third war in 6 years. The Palestinians have called for more than $4 billion in aid, and the Palestinian Refugee Agency, UNRWA, for $1.6 billion. UN soldier today became the first peacekeeper to die in the Central African Republic after a convoy was ambushed on the outskirts of the capital Bangui. The peacekeeper from Pakistan was killed in a road accident when a UN vehicle was attacked. On Thursday night, another soldier was severely wounded and 7 others injured. Unrest has killed at least 5,000 people this year in the African Republic. Clashes erupted again this week, the worst since the UN took charge of peacekeeping operations in September. The Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif met with army chiefs and advisors today to discuss clashes this week between Pakistani and Indian troops along the border in disputed Kashmir. At least 19 civilians on both sides have been killed in the violence, which is the worst serious violation of a 2003 ceasefire accord between India and Pakistan. Sharif told the National Security Committee that he convened the meeting in the capital Islamabad to discuss tensions along the so-called line of control in the disputed Himalayan region. A spokesperson for the Pakistan Foreign Ministry also told reporters today that Pakistan was not responsible for starting the violation of the ceasefire.
2 agenda items on our agenda today. One is the tension on the line of control, and the other one briefing an update on Zarbias. We've cleared all the North Waziristan area, including the city that we visited yesterday of Bidinshah, and the adjoining mountains, the mountain tops, which the Corps Commander specially showed me while he was traveling with me in the helicopter yesterday. So we were all very thrilled and very happy to see the outcome of the Zarb-e-Azam, mashallah, proceeding very successfully. And depots where they had stored all the explosives.
A pro-democracy protest that has blocked main roads in Hong Kong for almost 2 weeks could drag on for days yet after talks aimed at resolving a bitter standoff between the city's government and student demonstrators collapsed. The talks, which were originally scheduled for today, were called off by the government, who said the dialogue had been undermined by an earlier call from student leaders for supporters to turn out in force to occupy the main protest zone. Even before the announcement, it was clear that the two sides held vastly different positions over whether citizens could have more say in choosing the former British colony's leader. Hong Kong police force warned that protesters will receive legal sanctions as they disregarded the law and disrupted the residents' normal lives. German Chancellor Angela Merkel welcomed Chinese Premier Li Keqiang to Berlin today with an official ceremony. Economic ties between Germany and China are the focus of today's high-level meeting between the two countries' governments. Merkel and Li are expected to sign an accord aimed at expanding bilateral business ties between Europe and Asia's biggest economies. But human rights issues, including the pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, are also likely to be discussed. North and South Korea exchanged fire today after gunners in the north targeted balloons carrying leaflets critical of the country's reclusive regime. The South Korean Defense Ministry said that North Korean gunmen fired the anti-aircraft rounds at the balloons for 20 minutes and some of the shots landed on South Korean soil. After a warning, South Korea responded with 40 rounds from a heavy machine gun. The exchange is the latest in a series of similar incidents between the two countries, the most recent of which came last Thursday when patrol boats from North Korea and South Korea exchanged fire in the Yellow Sea. The incident came as North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un has not been seen in public for 35 days and was not on a list of dignitaries at a celebration of the anniversary of the founding of the ruling Workers' Party, sparking speculation that the head of one of the world's most secretive countries is ailing or has been removed in a secret coup. Ukraine's ceasefire continues to be broken in the city of Donetsk, where pro-Russian rebels are battling to recapture the airport from government forces. Kyiv said that there has been no let-up in the separatist efforts and again pointing an accusing finger at Russia. Meanwhile, in Belarus, at a meeting of a bloc of ex-Soviet republics, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov insisted the separatists be included in the search for a solution. He said that there should be a wide-ranging political dialogue, a constitutional reform including all regional and all of Ukraine's political forces in a move to solve the crisis in the country. According to the Kremlin, Russian President Vladimir Putin could hold talks with Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko next week on the sidelines of a summit of Asian and European leaders in Milan to discuss the situation in the country. A senior health official said leading global health experts did not anticipate the scale of the Ebola outbreak. Chris Dye from the World Health Organization, the WHO, said the international response was helping but needed to continue. The WHO says Ebola is now entrenched in the capitals of the worst affected states, Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. The outbreak has killed more than 3,860 people, mainly in West Africa. More than 200 health workers are among the victims. And finally tonight, Malala Yousafzai of Pakistan and Kailash Satyarthi of India won the Nobel Peace Prize today for risking their lives to fight for children's rights. 60-year-old Satyarthi has been at the forefront of a global movement to end child slavery and exploitative child labor since 1980, when he gave up his career as an electrical engineer. He welcomed the fact that he was a joint winner along with Malala, who at 17 became the youngest ever Nobel Prize winner. When she was a student, Mingora, the main town in Pakistan's volatile Swat Valley, Malala was shot in the head by a Taliban gunman 2 years ago for insisting that girls as well as boys have the right to an education. Surviving several operations with the help of British medical care, she continued both her activism and her studies.
Despite her youth, Malala Yousafzai has already fought for several years for the right of girls to education, and has shown by example that children and young people too can contribute to improving their own situations. This she has done under the most dangerous circumstances. Through her heroic struggle, she has become a leading spokesperson for girls' rights to education.
For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at NOI Kuwait News. Before we end, here is a quick reminder of today's headlines. The UN envoy to Syria warns that up to 700 people are still trapped in Ain al-Arab as fighting continues in the town. Israeli occupation forces closes Al-Aqsa Mosque, stopping Palestinians from performing Friday prayers. The Pakistani Prime Minister meets army chiefs over clashes between Pakistani and Indian troops. Protesters in Hong Kong return to the streets after talks between the government and protest leaders are cancelled.